On my person and laid out in front of me, I have a variety of knives as well as a saw. As far as a survival knife or a knife that I would take with me for a couple weeks of vacation in the backcountry, I would really enjoy having on me something that I can use for small woodwork, something sort of this size. I would also like to have something that I can do some more chopping with, a little heavier knife work, definitely something that I can pound on. So a small chopper is something that's really good for me. And this folding saw, any type of saw, right? But this folding saw for me has become a pretty critical item in my kit, in my backpack. I am pretty strong, no big deal, but I'm not that strong. And being able to cut through things versus this continual motion of hacking or doing a lot of knife work is actually kind of hard on my muscles. So a saw about this size that's compact, I can actually sharpen these blades pretty easily, is a great thing to have on me. I'm going to show you some of my harvesting techniques using it, but I'm also going to show you some knife cuts right now. So to begin with, all of the knives I have in front of me, barring these two pocket knives, their grind is a single bevel V grind, basically a saber grind, and it's kind of overall term is a Scandinavian grind. The grind is when you're looking at the cross section of a knife, looking at the way in which the metal has been taken off to create your edge. All of these basically come down straight and then they angle into the bottom of the blade. There are many ways to create a blade. You could have a convex blade. You could have a double bevel blade where it comes down and then there's one angle and then there's another angle. These ones start a little below halfway point in general from the bulk of the blade. The reason a single bevel Scandinavian grind is so convenient is that I'm able to sharpen it really easily. I don't need to worry so much about it rolling over or having difficult or multiple edges to work with. In fact, the sandstone out here is something that I can sharpen on, but even creating a bit of a block with some sandstone paper on it, I suggest 600 and a 400 grit is something that I can use. Once the grind or the shape of the blade has been made, we then get into honing work and polishing work, also known as sharpening. And basically the idea here is that because it's flat and then has one angle to it, I can very easily sharpen this blade. And the same thing can happen with really flat rocks and such. So mostly for sharpening techniques do I prefer the Scandinavian grind. This knife in particular actually has a 3/4 tang. So when you hear about tangs, it is not the blade part, but the stock metal that runs through the handle. A 3/4 tang means that it goes to about 3/4 of the way. Some of the shapes of the stock material will be cut in. Some of them will go the whole width of the blade, like this one right here, where you can actually see all the way around that it has the metal. And basically the handle is just two pieces of wood bound to the entirety of the blade. And you can also have an even shorter partial tang, which is something like a pocket knife. This means that the pivot point, the rotational balance of this, is in the center. So here's what I have to say about these varieties of knives. In my car, so this is a very personal opinion about my knives, my body, my type of woodworking, what I'm doing out here. In my car, I carry pocket knives. Super easy, super convenient. I'm not doing a lot of woodworking or anything like that. Usually I'm cutting string, maybe opening up a package, flat back to the spine. I can put my finger on it, do nice, easy strokes, really simple. If I were to take this out into the bush, my problem is that I'm doing a lot of banging on this knife, and it's really dangerous to know that at this pivot point, the blade can break and come and slice my hands. So I'm not particularly a fan of pocket knives in the backcountry, but they certainly have a lot of value in the front country settings or kind of car camping settings. And then of course there's, the Leatherman. Leathermans are awesome, something that I might have in my pack because of all the extra tools it has. You know what a Leatherman, it has all sorts of things. It's got files, it's got picks, we can clean out our nails. There's a little saw on this one. So the extra tools are really great, but as a knife, not my preference at all. The 3/4 is not bad. It's a nice length of a blade, good for woodworking. I can get a lot of stuff done with this. Still not necessarily the strongest. I just put these in the wrong sheaths. But lightweight, easy to carry. Strap it to my belt, no problem. Something like this is great because it's a full tang. It has a nice balancing point, meaning that when we're talking about something like an axe, the weight is in the blade part, so that you have more force leveraged against the material in the front, which gives you greater chopping power. You don't need the blade to be as sharp, but what you lack is control. With something like this, where it's more balanced, the knife is more balanced in general, I'm able to have a little bit more control, to be a little bit more agile and nimble with the way I'm using this knife. I prefer these kind of small size choppers for doing my woodwork because they're pretty light. When you're chopping, you're really just using your wrist. It could still be tiring though. If I have something really heavy in my hand, it becomes distracting to me and I have to stop and massage my muscles, and it's sort of a strength thing. So I don't know. This is a good size blade for me. So this is my setup. I would say that if I had to choose 2 things to take with me, I don't know if I can narrow it down. If I had to take 3 knives to take with me, I would take this amazing Sasha Puko style blade for my fine woodworking, full tang as we discussed, really nice balancing point, very easy to control. I would probably take my Bushman as a nice chopping knife that I can also billet against and use for doing kind of a pulling method, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second to take off wood. And then my saw. So any combination of these would work, but this is my favorite, followed by the saw and the chopper. And once again, I would like to recommend Sasha knives. Go look it up on the internet. Beautiful handmade blades that are made with a lot of love. Safety, real quickly. One of the most common ways to get a knife cut is actually when you take it out of your sheath. It's because people don't put their hands over the sheath. They, for some reason, put a couple fingers a little bit above, take it out and slice right through your fingers. Sucks. You just gotta be conscious. Put it down, find control, and then grab it. As far as how you're cutting, imagine that you sort of have a circle around you. If there are people around, your follow through should not touch any of them. Also, your follow through, no matter what you're doing with your wood, shouldn't be coming close to your fingers. So if I'm holding a piece of wood and going like this, I need to make sure I'm not going to back up and come against my hand. And certainly if you're a little bit more relaxed in a position like this, the last thing you want to be doing is carving towards your femoral artery, right? These are stupid things, but they happen, particularly when you're tired or when it's a little bit dark out and you're trying to finish a project by the fire or something. So before you cut anything, really be conscious of where your follow through is going and make sure that it doesn't hit you. On that note, a sharper blade is much better to be cut by than a blade that is not sharp. It leaves a cleaner slice, which can be easier to stitch, easier to heal, easier to clean, all sorts of things. So taking care for these blades basically means, every time you use it, just go ahead and give it a couple strokes on, depending upon what you do, maybe first on your 400 grit side and then on your 600 grit side, and be done with it. Put your knife away clean and ready to go for your next use. The longer you wait, the more knife work you're going to have to do to clean up your blade and get back to that single bevel shape that I enjoy. So let's talk about a few different types of cuts. The first one is going to be the rose cut. So if I have, a branch and I want to get it off, what I'm going to do is put my finger most of the time on the spine. So just for a little more info, spine, tip, belly, handle, and then there's some more parts, but the most important. And basically go around in a circle. And the blade is doing the work, not me. Knives are made for slicing. They're not made for pushing through wood. So just kind of move around it and slice. And what happens is that I'm creating this kind of rosette. And when it comes off, it will look like a flower. So we have sort of our flower looking rose cut here, and a nice clean end that I can either, clean to a point or flatten out. So this is a really nice way to take a branch off of a tree, for example. One thing I forgot to mention, whenever you're not using your knife, the best place for it to be is back in its sheath. If I leave it in a log, I could, trip over it, cut myself this way. If I put it in the sand, it might get eaten by the sand monsters, or stepped on and cut the bottom of your foot, which is even worse. So when you're not using it, put it back in your sheath, easy breezy. I'm just going through different knives just for fun. We have a few options when we're just kind of cutting straight pieces of wood. I can push forward. I can keep my arm in place and pull back. Or I can do a combo, and that's really a power stroke, right? So I'm starting in together and pulling out, and you can remove a lot of wood this way. Also nice too if one thing is getting tired and you want to change it up, but the point is to make sure that you're slicing and in control versus pushing, which does nothing. We have to slice with our blade, okay? So that's one stroke. The next thing I want to do, it's kind of a big piece of wood, but why not, is I want to show you how to billet something. So I have this here because if I just put my stick in the sand, it's going to continue to drop, and I want a flat level balancing point. I need some kind of a baton, some type of a strong stick that's not going to break against the back of my knife. What I'm going to go ahead and do is put my knife in my non-dominant hand, place my knife pretty close to where the handle is, pick the place that I want to split this piece of wood, grab my billet, and begin by hitting right over the top or towards the back. So one thing that's good to know is, maybe I'll switch it. This is kind of at an angle. It's kind of hard to keep that flat, right? This side is a little flatter, so maybe we'll do that. I have some manipulation available to me. If it feels like something is kind of going off this way, I can kind of turn the handle in the other direction. Take your time. Once it's in there, you can go ahead and hit closer towards the tip and split a piece of wood. So sagebrush is a great wood to make a fire set out of. It's not actually easy to split sagebrush because it can be really twisty, but that worked out really well. So yay us. So that's billeting. The next thing we can do is plane. With planing, I'm actually going to take my knife and put the blade facing away from me. I'm going to stick the tip into, my nice piece of wood here. Take my billet once again. I'm going to pound the bottom of the knife. And I want to go far enough in that I feel really confident that this knife isn't going to come out. That feels pretty good. One thing that's cool about setting out my wool VersaCloth right now is that I'm catching all my wood shavings, which is great because then I have it for, you know, my tinder nest or for some quick kindling, and it's all right there. I'm also not leaving a mess all over the ground, which is pretty cool. So on this sagebrush, I can kind of, you know, peel off some of the back of this, and we have great fire making material. And let's say that I want to really smooth out this surface. Grab with my non-dominant hand and basically just pull. And I'm starting to get a flat surface. The larger the angle, the more wood I can take off. The smaller the angle, the less wood that I'll take off, and the flatter that surface will become. So I can even kind of just rub up against it if I'm really trying to file. If I want to take a lot of wood, just increase the angle. And so that's planing. This is really nice if you want to make square corners on something. It's also a really safe way to cut. You know, we talked about that sort of circle and your follow through. So long as my hand doesn't go down towards the blade, there's really nothing unsafe about this. The only unsafe thing that can happen is if for some reason my blade comes out altogether, which is why you take the time to really build it into this piece of wood. When you're done with that, you have your nice smooth edges, getting for a perfect fire board here. When you remove your knife, you want to be careful. So you jiggle it back and forth until it loosens up, release it, and then put it back in its sheath. Those are sort of the kind of four main styles of cutting, I guess. We have the rosette to get wood off of branches and things like that. We have the variety of just push and pull strokes, and then the power stroke of the combo. We have our splitting of wood by building it, and then we have planing, which is great for flattening out. I suppose the last thing that I will say about knives, I don't remember what I was going to say, but it must have been important because it was the last thing. Hold a bit, hold up. I got my blood bubble, I got my safety, I got my cuts. Well, it can't be that important apparently. Right? What am I missing, guys? No, that's pretty much it. Last thing is just carrying. You know, we've talked about making sure that you always have a knife on your person. Your knife is like your wallet. You know, don't leave home without it. It's super important to have a cutting tool on you. Nice when you already have a belt that you can just attach it to. If you're kind of in a survival situation, really nice to have an adjustable belt because you might be dropping some pounds. So just keep that in mind. The other thing you can do is, you know, tie it around your neck. So it is nice to find sheaths where you're able to, you know, strap it through and carry it on your neck. It's the details that start to matter when you really get into all these crafts. If I keep this really low, it's gonna knock all over the place. If I keep it really high, it's really dangerous for me to take my knife out of my sheath. So where should you wear your knife? In an appropriate location for the length of your arm and a safe pull out of your, you know, from your blade from your sheath. Those kinds of things. This is just a piece of buckskin that I use. I could also go ahead and use this as a belt. So that's great. As I've mentioned, having a steel blade on you at all times is like having your wallet on you at all times. It's a really critical piece of equipment. An incredible invention in human history to have steel blades. However, sometimes we lose knives, sometimes we're in situations where we weren't expecting to need a knife, we don't have it, and we still need a sharp edge. So I'm not going to get into lithics, particularly into a lot of flint knapping, but I would like to demonstrate how to break some rocks on each other and create some kind of a sharp edge. So the first thing we need to do is talk about what type of rock we should be using. These ones right here are an example of an extrusive igneous rock, meaning that they were born of lava and cooled really quickly. And these ones are called basalt. They're high in calcium and magnesium bearing properties. And the great thing about them is that because they were born in a fire, they can also be put back into a fire without exploding into a lot of shards. So basalt, which is on on a lot of different mountains in the Southwest. It's going to be something that we might consider using for hot rock boiling if we need to boil our water, and we'll demonstrate that at the fire a bit later. Another type of rock that we have out here is our sandstone, which is a type of sedimentary rock. And basically what's happened is that wind and water and ice caps have, pushed a lot of material from their original location to another location, and then over thousands of years, they've lithified, they've cemented and compacted, and over hundreds of millions of years, they've come into a form that we have here, like sandstone in this area. So in Utah in general, the sandstone that we find that is forming the cliffs in the area is actually from the Appalachian Mountains from, as I said, millions and millions of years ago. So it's pretty incredible to watch that development. Another type of sandstone is, another type of sedimentary rock to be noted is chert. And chert is sort of a general name for a really good type of rock that's easy to nap, to create blades from. And the reason is that it has a really high silica content, and though basalt is not good for napping, another thing that's born of lava and cools really rapidly, that's more like glass, is
quartz?
No.
Obsidian?
Obsidian, yeah. Okay, let me try that again. Okay, so another type of igneous rock that cools really rapidly, born of lava, is obsidian, but it's more glass-like, fractures in sort of this conchoidal shape that we really like for napping. So it, like chert, which is of a sedimentary form, is really high in the silica content. So it has a cryptocrystalline structure. Doesn't really matter. Anywho, so we've come across two different types of rock. Both have the ability to be napped, but not in these two states. So my choice right now to bang some rocks together is actually going to be this rock right here, which is really, basically what you're looking for is a rock that's really high in quartzite. And it's a metamorphic rock. This rock is basically the sandstone, and somehow it's been chemically or altered or heat altered or whatever, broken down once again and then reamassed. So for our quartz, we basically have sandstone that's metamorphized into what we have here. This is a massive structure, a non-foliated structure, and the inside of it kind of looks sugary. And it likewise is going to break in this particular pattern that's going to give us flakes that have sharp edges. So some safety precautions. I always think it's a really good idea to have some kind of eyewear on whenever you're breaking rocks. Nice to be fully covered. In general, if people were watching me, I would have them stand behind me as opposed to in front of me. But crew here all has their safety glasses on as well, and we're just gonna hope I do a decent job at this. This is what we're gonna call our anvil. This is what I'm trying to hit against. And what you're looking for in general is sort of a rounded edge. This one's flat here, but I want it so that when I bang a rock like this on it, that it doesn't hit the ground. And so a nice kind of large rounded shape is what we're looking for in the anvil. In the core, which we're going to take the flake off of, we're looking for something that's fairly flat. And what I'm going to do, put my safety glasses on, go ahead and stand up, and I'm going for, sort of the top, like even less than 1/2 of an inch, and I'm gonna bang that on this. Maybe I can do this sitting if that's a better shot. So I'm gonna give it a couple taps to see. I'm gonna stand up. I really want to be kind of light with my arms. I want to find that edge. And when I'm ready, I think I've kind of got some consistency, break it. So that didn't quite work out. I actually ended up taking the whole top off versus just taking off a piece of the top. So let's try it again. One thing to note is this rock makes a pretty high pitch in comparison to this one, which is a little deeper. So this would be my choice. You're looking for higher pitched rocks. So what I'm looking to do is try and create a platform. There we go. So, let's see if we can find that other piece. That's okay. Anyways, I've done this correctly this time. I have a couple of flakes that came off. I don't know where the other half of this is. This one came off from here, and the other one came off. I don't know where it went, so we'll be careful. Good to always have shoes on. But what it's done is create a really sharp point and some really fine, narrow, thin edges, just like a blade. So I can do skinning work with this. I could certainly skin any type of little rodent, small game. You know, to be honest with you, a lot of them you can just peel off, but you have to get that first start nick somewhere down the belly or something, and something like this could do it. We also spoke a bit about hand sockets. And there was a question about how we get this hole for our spindle. And one thing that you can do is take the pointed end and you literally just start grinding away. You could use the tip of your knife, but if you have the opportunity not to use the tip of your knife, not to damage that blade, might as well use a rock instead. Once I've set that platform, so you have to know that this flake actually came off the top. My next strikes are going to be kind of like on the edge here or here. So that would be where I would aim for, one of those 2 points. And I could continue to produce conchoidal fractured pieces of rock, you know, that have sharp edges and oftentimes points at the tip. That's better. So we're getting these, you know, really fine. You can see it in the light there, can't you? Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's how thin the edge is. And then when you start to get into napping, what we can do is basically we need to take down that edge a little bit because it's too fragile right now. I mean, this could cut my hand easily, but if I try and work it against anything, it's going to break off. So we'll compact it a little bit and reshape it into the angle we want. Or you can use something like a piece of bone or antler and start pressure flaking at it and create saws and work designs into this. And ultimately you come out with arrowheads and knives and stone tools. It's quite a craft to be a really good flint knapper. It's something that I have obviously not achieved yet, though, you know, you just have to put your mind to these types of skills and enjoy the process of learning and experiencing how to get better at them. So this is one of the pieces that's flaked off after, you know, basically hitting 2 rocks together. It was a secondary hit after the platform was set and the first flake came off. It's not a perfect example. It's not something I would actually like to show you. It could be a little thicker. This blade on the edge, you know, where that light is shining through is a really good sign. It's, you know, okay. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. It's decent.